I was ever trapped on a desert island with only one game to play for the rest of my life, I'd probably end up going with Doom. However, if I had a second choice, it'd no doubt be Monolith Productions' Fear. A brutal, violent, bullet time soaked shooter released in 2005 from Microsoft Windows. The basic plot revolves around a psychopath named Paxton Fettel, trained by a large corporation named Armacam to lead an army of cyborg soldiers known as replicas. During the game's opening, Fettel goes insane and breaks out of confinement, taking the replicas with him. You take on the role of the Point Man, a newly inducted operative working for the 1st Encounter Assault Recon Team, or FEAR for short, and are set off to hunt Fettel down and presumably kill him. From there, the story just keeps expanding as you learn more and more about Fettel's history and things begin to unravel. I think the best way to describe Fear is The Matrix meets John Woo films meets Asian horror. That's kind of the game in a nutshell. Watch any gunfight from a film like Hard Boiled and you'll instantly see where these guys have taken their influences. Pistols, shotguns and machine guns may be standard fare, but the way they wreak havoc with the environment isn't. Gunfights often leave rooms with large bullet holes where walls and floor used to be, with dust and other particles still floating in the air. Shoot a metal surface and it's like you've set off a giant sparkler. Shoot a stack of papers and they explode like confetti. Throw a grenade and watch how it distorts your vision as it sends nearby items flying across the room. Every single thing reacts to getting hit and it can look truly gorgeous. In between killing replicas, the Point Man is repeatedly haunted by visions of a spooky looking little girl named Olma. It's all complemented by some incredible sound design, topped off with a very unobtrusive and atmospheric soundtrack by composer Nathan Grigg. It's a combination of balls out action and suspenseful horror that works surprisingly well. One minute you're karate kicking guys across the room and the next you're seeing nightmarish visions as more and more of the game's backstory is revealed. But the shooting really steals the show here. Monolith have proven that they know how to make a good shooting game, and this is really their masterpiece. From nailing guys to walls with the penetrator, to stripping the flesh of an enemy's bones with the particle gun, it's all great fun. The real showstopper is the shotgun, which can kill even the toughest of enemies in a matter of hits. If you haven't got this thing in one of your 3 weapon slots at all times, then you're playing the game wrong. Much like Max Payne, Fear uses a bullet time type skill to slow down the gameplay to help the player in combat situations. This ability, along with the player's health, can be further extended through something called boosters found throughout the levels, and you're going to want to upgrade these because the replicas are really smart. They won't just stand back and wait for you to attack. They'll lob grenades your way, try to flank you, retreat if they're under suppressive fire, or just flat out storm your position if they've got the numbers. Instead of fighting enemies scattered throughout the levels, you instead fight squads at a time, usually 4 or 5 dudes at once. For some reason, this makes the combat just so much more satisfying. There's something just so awesome about taking out an entire squad bar one than watching him retreat when he realizes he's the last one left. They're also quite vocal during combat, shouting out orders to one another and talking strategy between themselves as they try to bring you down, and this definitely adds to the enjoyment. What makes these gunfights so good, however, is that they'll always play out in a totally different way. You can literally replay checkpoints over and over and it will never be the same. Use a different gun or approach from a different vantage point and just watch how dynamically the AI reacts to your playstyle. Fear's only real weakness is its repetition. Primarily you're just up against other guys with guns. They may look different but they function exactly the same. Occasionally you'll take on these cloaked assassin type enemies or a replica soldier in heavy armor, which is essentially the same as a normal replica with a crapload more health, but it still ends up feeling very samey. Visually, the game is very crisp, with clean, sharp textures running on the updated Lithtech engine. There's good use of effects like dynamic lighting and all that sort of jazz, but there's only 3 or so different styled environments. An industrial setting, an office building, and then another industrial setting towards the end of the game. Also, the whole little girl thing can get old really quick. I mean, the sight of a kid standing at the end of a corridor can only creep you out so many times. A lot of these moments are also heavily scripted and rely on you looking in a very specific direction. So if you happen to be fiddling around and looking the wrong way, you're going to miss these moments entirely. And lastly, I find the story to be kind of bogus. It starts off well enough, but the end twist, if you can call it that, is a little bizarre and doesn't quite make sense. Armacam's grand plan, as is revealed in the game's ending, is downright contemptuous, but I think it tries too hard to be scandalous and ends up feeling way too contrived. but in all honesty, you'll probably be having too much fun throwing grenades at guys in slow motion that this won't even bother you. When you do finish the main story after about 8 or so hours, there's 2 expansion packs to get into: Perseus Mandate and Extraction Point. Extraction Point continues the Point Man story after the events of the original game's ending, whereas Perseus Mandate puts you in the shoes of another Fear team member around the same time as the events are unfolding in Armorcam HQ. The writing is really crappy, to be honest, and the storylines aren't even considered canon, but both of these are still worth playing. They offer up a decent campaign, some new weapons, enemy types, and keep the tone and atmosphere in line with the original. Extraction Point is probably my favourite, with a shootout in a funeral home at the start of the expansion that may be one of the best in the entire series. Whilst Fear may not be a good all-round game compared to other Monolith titles like No One Lives Forever, I think in terms of raw action and straight-up shooting, it's as good as it comes. The only other game that comes to mind that is anywhere near as awesome is the Max Payne series, though I think even that plays second fiddle. If you can look past the repetitive nature of the environments and can find yourself invested in the story, it really does deliver the goods. I never get sick of throwing a grenade into a group of replicas in slow motion and watching them get blown to shreds. Eventually, Fear also got a couple of sequels, Fear 2 Project Origin, and then finally Fear 3. It's widely agreed that Fear 1 is the best of the bunch, but in the next video I'll take a look at just how these 2 other games hold up, and we'll decide for ourselves.